It was Christmas Eve, 1945, in the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. Snow covered the ground, and homes glowed with warmth and decorations. At the home of George and Jenny Sodder, the family was preparing for a quiet, happy holiday. The Sodders were a close-knit Italian-American family with 10 children. That night, 9 of them were at home. The older sons had already gone to bed. 5 of the younger children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny Jr., and Betty, had asked to stay up late to play with some new toys. Their mother, Jenny, said yes, as long as they remembered to turn off the lights and lock the doors before going to bed. Around midnight, she kissed them goodnight and went to her room. About 30 minutes later, Jenny woke up to the sound of the telephone ringing. It was an odd time for a call. She answered and heard a woman's voice asking for someone Jenny didn't know. In the background, there was laughter and clinking glasses. Jenny told the caller she had the wrong number and hung up. She noticed the house lights were still on, the curtains open, and the door unlocked. The children were not in sight, but she assumed they'd gone up to the attic where they slept. She turned everything off and went back to bed. At 1:30 a.m., Jenny was startled awake again, this time by a loud thud on the roof, followed by what sounded like something rolling off. She paused, but after hearing nothing more, she drifted back to sleep. Just an hour later, she woke again, this time to the smell of smoke. The house was on fire. Flames were spreading fast through the stairwell. George and Jenny rushed to get their children out. They were able to get 4 of them, Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., safely outside. But the 5 younger children who had stayed up late were nowhere to be seen. The staircase leading to the attic was engulfed in flames. George tried to reach them. First, he ran outside to fetch his ladder, but it was missing. Then he tried to start his 2 trucks, parked nearby, to climb on them and reach the windows. Strangely, neither of the trucks would start, even though they had worked just the day before. Desperate, George tried to break through the attic window by climbing the wall. He sliced his arm in the attempt, but it was no use. By the time the fire department arrived, 7 hours later, nothing remained of the Sodder home but ash and smoke. It was Christmas morning, and 5 children were missing. But no bones were ever found in the ruins. Authorities believed the children had died in the fire, but the Sodders refused to accept it. And as the days, months, and years passed, strange events continued to feed their suspicion. First, there were the details from the night of the fire. The phone call at midnight. The thud on the roof. The trucks that wouldn't start. The missing ladder, later found down an embankment, far from the house. Then, there were the witnesses. A woman claimed to have seen the missing children peering out of a car as the fire raged. A waitress said she had served them breakfast the next morning at a rest stop. Another woman said she saw them with 2 men and 2 women at a Charleston hotel a week later. The children appeared quiet and reserved. When she tried to speak to them, the adults became hostile. Still, none of these leads were ever confirmed. George and Jenny became obsessed. They began investigating on their own. They contacted the FBI and wrote letters to anyone who might help. They paid to have the site of the fire examined. A cremation specialist told them that bones would have survived a house fire that burned for just 45 minutes, especially 5 sets of bones, but none were found. In 1949, they persuaded a pathologist to dig through the remains again. He found a few bones, belonging to 1 person, not 5. And those bones were determined to be from someone much older than any of the missing children. The Sodders became convinced. Their children had been kidnapped. But why? And by whom? Some speculated it was connected to George's strong political views. He was outspoken in his criticism of Mussolini, even among other Italian immigrants who still supported the dictator. He had received threats in the past. One man who came looking for work had told him that his house would go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed, in retaliation for his opinions. Was it just talk? Or a warning that came true? Others pointed to the fact that a strange man had been seen parked on the highway, watching the Sodder children in the days before the fire. Another man had been trying to sell life insurance to George and became angry when George refused. That man reportedly said, "Your house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed." But again, no evidence ever confirmed any of these suspicions. In 1952, the Sodders put up a billboard on Route 16 near their former home. It displayed the photos of the 5 missing children with the words, "What was their fate? Kidnapped, murdered, burned?" For over 3 decades, that billboard haunted drivers passing through Fayetteville. Tips continued to come in. Sightings were reported from as far away as Florida and Texas. The Sodders chased every lead, but they always came up empty. Then, in 1967, a letter arrived. It was postmarked in Kentucky. Inside was a photo of a young man in his 20s. On the back were the words, "Louis Sodder. I love brother Frankie. Ill boys. A90132 or 35. Louis was one of the missing Sodder children. The man in the photo had dark hair and eyes like Louis. The family was shaken. George was certain it was him, but no one could explain the message, the numbers, or who had sent the letter. They hired another private investigator, who left for Kentucky and was never heard from again. George died in 1969, still not knowing what happened to his children. Jenny followed in 1989. Until her death, she wore black every day in mourning. Their remaining children kept the mystery alive, but as years passed, hope began to fade. Today, the case remains unsolved. No bodies, no confirmed sightings, no arrests. Just 5 children, vanished into thin air. The Sodder home never stood again. Only a small memorial garden remains on the site. The billboard, once a symbol of a family's undying hope, was taken down in the 1980s. But the case continues to draw attention from researchers, authors, and true crime followers. There are still theories. Some believe the children were abducted by a child trafficking ring. Others suggest the fire was staged as a cover-up. A few hold to the idea that the children may have survived for a time, but were later silenced by whoever took them. Still, there's no proof. No answers. Just speculation and a trail gone cold. And yet, the case refuses to die. It is one of the oldest missing persons cases in the United States. Every now and then, someone new hears the story and begins to wonder, could 5 children really vanish without a trace? Could a house fire really leave behind not a single bone? Could the strange phone call, the ladder, the trucks, the sightings, all be coincidence? Or was something darker at work that Christmas night? The story of the Sodder children is a reminder that sometimes real life is more unsettling than fiction. It is a story filled with sorrow, suspicion, and the enduring power of a question that was never answered. What really happened to Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty Sodder? We may never know.